Welcome to eLearning Unlocked.
Hi, I'm Julia.
I'm Marielle, and we're going to talk about e-learning trends, best practices.
Yeah, we're going to dive into different features that you can use for your e-learning and your e-learning platform.
Yeah, so we'll focus on different terms, like what is social learning, how can you leverage your community, how can you make sure your learning is interactive. It's really targeted at instructional designers. So the idea is that if you're an industry professional, instructional designer, or you're part of an e-learning team, this might be useful for you to, gain additional insights or learn more about the world of e-learning.
Yeah, we'll talk about some mistakes or best practices that you can encounter, or provide you with some insights on the content creation and why e-learning is such a big topic nowadays.
So let's get into the specific topics, but thanks for following our podcast. We're here with Julia.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm Marielle. I'm CEO at the Learning Lab. And Julia.
Yeah, I'm operations manager at the Learning Lab, and we'll be happy to take you through one of the first topics, which is mistakes to avoid when building an online course. So maybe we could start from, let's say, the core point here, right? So why actually so many courses fail?
Yeah. So let's get into what are some common mistakes. So I think one of the things that really is very central, I mean, it sort of sounds like an obvious one, but you really need to think about the audience and the research, especially a retail brand, of course, or a fashion brand would really need to think about how is the audience going to receive it. And unfortunately, those people don't always have the best learning setting. They're in a shop, they're on the shop floor, and so they might really be struggling, right? To access like desktop friendly learning.
I mean, each of the audiences that you need to address, no matter if it's a shop assistant or someone at the office, they're still kind of struggling with the environment they're working in, right? Because even if you're sitting comfortably at your desk, you still have a lot of different meetings, so it's really like hard to focus.
Yeah.
And then that's why the research audience is really crucial as a first kind of item here in this, let's say, journey.
I think the other thing is the overload, because I think being in a corporate setting, you can digest huge emails, really long sentences, big information. But when you're in a dynamic work setting, let's say, for example, on the shop floor, you also do want the information to be quite short, snappy, digestible. You want to be able to come back to it later. You want it to be kind of easy, like not too much content at once, because I think we kind of underestimate otherwise the cognitive overload. So a big mistake, I think, is the cognitive overload as well.
Yeah, especially what comes with this overload is the fact of presenting that information, that data. So if you really overwhelm your audience with a lot of information in a very poor way, right? So if you really focus on text heavy slides, then the attention is not there, right?
And it's a shame, because I think there's a huge opportunity without spending additional budget or time or effort to just try and really break that down. I mean, I think you have so many tools. You can use AI for that now as well. And you can literally feed even, ChatGPT the information, say, can we make it more conversational? Can we break it down? I think using very corporate vocabulary, it's not only, less engaging for people. I mean, English may not be their first language, or the language that you're presenting in may not be that person's first language. But I think on top of that, it sort of creates distance when you're very formal and very corporate, right? And I think you want to kind of be like, hey guys, this is our new product. This is why people are going to love it. Of course, you're going to have to adapt it to the culture, that's linked to the brand or the corporate culture. You want it to be very respectful, but it goes a long way connecting with your audience.
Yeah, exactly. And it actually leads us to another mistake that it's commonly encountered, which is actually poor engagement and interactivity on those kind of topics, because it's, all relates, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, it's about the interactivity and engagement. And sometimes it's on a such poor level that you really don't give that much attention to this part.
Yeah.
And thus, you have some issues with the with the courses.
No, but I mean, I totally agree with you there about the engagement. It's a bit what we see with everyone and how most people learn. You have tons of different learners. So obviously each person, people can be neurodivergent or wired differently. Each person's going to have very much their own experience. But I think a little bit of interactivity forces the person into that situation rather than to kind of just scan through text and kind of almost disconnect from it immediately. You also get a lot of people that feel, okay, this is an obligatory course. So if you don't make it somehow easy to see the added value and ask them questions and show them that they're learning, I think it's very easy to just completely disengage from the course and just basically skip through everything. Yeah. So that's the other advantage, definitely, of the interactivity as well. You're
Exactly.
creating that link.
Exactly. It totally makes sense. And also you mentioned this kind of like obligatory courses that you need to take.
Yes.
But then at the same time, sometimes even the obligatory courses miss the clear learning outcomes, right? So
Absolutely.
it's a
Absolutely. And that goes to the point of the outcomes, where you're raising something really interesting as well, because I think, especially in adult learning, I want to know what I'm going to get out of this. So let's say it's a 15-minute course or it's a 5-minute course or even a 2-minute video. I think marketing it in a certain way and having just those clear course outcomes, like you're going to learn about the new collection, or you're going to learn about this product, or you're going to learn about the sales ceremony, but you really immediately are put on a very clear track. It's kind of a respect to the learner as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also it builds this kind of like excitement that we always cater for, right?
Yes.
In the e-learning is that the learners should be really excited about taking the course, even the mandatory ones, right?
Yes.
Because it's like we all have to do that at some point, but why not make it exciting?
For sure, you want their buy-in, right? You want them to buy into it and say, actually, I'm going to engage with this. I'm going to get something out of it. It's going to make my daily work better. It's going to make my performance better. I'm going to enjoy this. I think it's so key.
Amazing. So this actually leads us directly to the core point of this discussion, is how we can prevent those mistakes.
Absolutely, because that's really what we want to know, right? It's like, okay, so you have these pitfalls, let's say, these things that can go wrong. How can we improve them? I think I'm always very big on the course structure. I think, having an intuitive course structure that really makes sense, so that you don't just start producing a whole bunch of e-learning content. You really sit down, you plan it in your learning platform, you plan it with your content team, and it makes sense, right? There's a roadmap there. So there's a bigger picture. It doesn't have to be complex. It can be very simple.
Yeah, I think starting from the basics and really trying to map it a bit, as you said,
Yes.
it's already a good start, and it will help you envision the whole process, right? Because then if you had this kind of like little sketch, like the structure itself, then it suddenly makes more sense rather than having like a global picture.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of tools that can help in this one, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you can also then really make sure that that structure is clearly presented in your LMS, that your students really can see their learner journey. I think it's so important. But it starts with having that, of course, on paper, and then really being able to put that in the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is totally true. And yeah, you actually mentioned a bit earlier about like regarding the interactivity part.
Yes.
So what could be actually done in order to enhance this engagement?
Yes, this is a very good point. So I think with the engagement, there's a few different things. Of course, we need to find ways of having interactive and engaging content. So that can be through the use of different authoring tools that allow that kind of interactivity based, in engagement. Yeah. Or you could have an LMS that also allows with a built-in authoring tool that really allows for the engagement. But I think it's really important that you have easy access to templates to create quizzes, to have different games of, ordering or sorting or true or false, or maybe watching some videos.
And this can be actually covered in the first kind of action that you need to take, which is creating the structure, right? If you already come up with a structure, then you can also include some ideas for different quizzes, different games, and you can use, again, different tools, the authoring tools or any other available options. If you use some blended learning, then you can also incorporate that on site. But there's plenty of examples.
Yeah.
You just need to kind of try to plan it and structure it in the very first phase.
No, absolutely, because then you can make sure that there's many different tools out there that you can use, but you can really make sure you have those quizzes and you have the games and you have the interactive notes in sprinkle, let's say, throughout your course, right? So also that it's not like course quiz, course quiz, because it's actually very nice to have a little leading, little question or a little game built in to just kind of lead the learner through their learning path. Yeah, and to kind of keep that engagement. And what's cool there is the knowledge checks, because I think when you just read text, it's so easy to say, oh, I've got it all. And then when someone asks you a question or the system asks you a question, it's so confronting sometimes, but you realize you actually didn't know as much as you thought, and you might need to go back and really like listen a little bit more carefully or read a bit more. So I think it's also like a good checkpoint for yourself as well. I think that's kind of point number 2, right? Is really engagement. Do you have anything else to add there, or?
I think that's really it. Let's say for the engagement part and really for building this kind of interactivity, is to really think of learning path for the user based on our audience kind of research, right?
No, absolutely. And I guess that brings us to our last point, which is really about the analytics and tracking the learner. It's once you've made your plan, you've produced your content, and you kind of understand your course outcomes, and you make sure you have some engagement. The best way to track, to see if you're on track, is really to have those analytics and to look a bit at the learner progress, right? So you can fine tune.
Yeah, exactly. Because then if you really look into that and you have a clear vision on how it's going, then you can really know what to improve, what works well. And with different kind of analytics, you can even dive deep into some of the quiz results, and you can see whether the questions, the type of questions you're choosing is really engaging. You can also see how much time the learner spends, for example, in this kind of analytics. So it's really important because this gives you the information that is core for the next steps, right? Because you need to have this kind of like lessons learned as well from this process.
You can kind of base your next steps, the next piece of content you're going to produce on the success rates for the quiz is too difficult, too easy, did people do it really fast. You can really kind of keep learning.
Exactly. That's true. Because this is what I wanted to mention right now as a sort of very last point.
Yeah.
In a way, is that one of the core mistakes that are made is that you sort of take your idea for granted and you believe that it will work out. It often happens that it doesn't, right?
But you have to keep evolving, right?
Exactly. So it's moving like a process, as you mentioned. It's like, you're doing the course for your learners, but in the end, you're also learning, so when you're working.
I love that. We're always learning. Yeah. That's a good note to end on. Thanks so much for listening to this 15-minute podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it. And next, we're going to look at the no-code LMSs.
Yeah, exactly. Stay tuned.